Hello, everyone. My name is Ceirra. I am a BQH practitioner, divine blueprint activator, and empowerment coach.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carrie, also known as the Quantum Gypsy, and I'm a BQH practitioner. And I've been partnering with Ceirra for well over a year and just helping people on their journey to understand what the hurdles that they've had placed in front of them and how to overcome them. And that has led us to what we're doing today. And Ceirra, what are we doing today?
Today, we're reading the Course in Miracles, page 4, and then we're going to start going through the lessons as well with you guys. I think the lessons are really important for actually reprogramming your mind. And so, doing the lessons with the text is incredible for your spiritual ascension and your awakening.
Yes, yes. So we're at chapter 1, page 4, starting at Miracle 13. And I'm just going to start reading here. Miracles are both beginnings and endings, and so they alter the temporal order. They are always affirmations of rebirth, which seems to go back but really go forward. They undo the past and the present and thus release the future. So in channelings before, when we've asked about forgiveness and time traveling and all of those things, I know that they've said that you alter basically the timeline you're on by going back to that area and healing it or forgiving it or sending it love. And this really actually brought that up for me in the affirmation of like, by doing the miracles, we can actually change the timelines and the trajectory of which we've been on.
Yeah, I feel like the way that I see time has expanded so much, especially when it comes to going into the past for healing. And then you can actually go into the future to heal the present. And so when we start to step into our multidimensional self, we realize that we don't have to be constrained by the sense of time. And so um, miracles are also not constrained through time and space.
So my dad and I were having a great heart to heart, and I love him very much because I can just talk about these things with him. And we were talking about the past, and I was like, what if the past never really existed and only existed is now? And every day we wake up and we're uploaded with this information, which we thought was the past, but that past actually never even happened. It's just an upload of like the data we get for that day. And he was just like, yeah, I thought of that too. And I'm like, well, that just makes this whole thing not seem as solid, as we're not as like held down by our past. If that's the case. But I mean, really, the miracle of love can heal a lot of that in the present, in the now.
That is so cool that you can have those conversations with your dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Just go down those rabbit holes together and just bounce ideas.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Okay. So miracles bear witness to truth. They're convincing because they arise from conviction. Without conviction, they deteriorate into magic, which is mindless and therefore destructive, or rather, the uncreative use of the mind. This one triggered me a little bit because I've always loved the idea of a magical world. But I understand there's no absolute in magic in some ways. And so, how can it be not of the mind? Because the mind creates stuff that's not of absolute.
When they say conviction, do they mean intention?
I think it's without faith or belief.
I guess when we think about magic and like doing spells, there's this difference when it comes to miracles. If you're in your divinity and you're allowing the unconditional love of what you're doing to flow through you.
Well, I think magic maybe is illusions. And so, the illusions are not truth in a way. So, you know, although they can be fun and can be a way to play in this world, they're also, what it's really getting back down to is what are the, the illusions can happen within the mind, but the heart, the love, the meat and potatoes of this world, you can't change those.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, especially since it says miracles are the truth. So it would make sense that magic was the illusion.
Right. And now when they say miracles, I just equate it with love. Right. So in my brain, like I'm translating it like miracles are acts of love. So like love is true. So anything like that shows the illusion not of love is not true.
Yeah.
Um, each day should be devoted to miracles. The purpose of time is to enable you to learn how to use time constructively. It is thus a teaching device and a means to an end. Time will cease when it is no longer useful in facilitating learning. It's here as a tool for us to learn and to feel that fear like time is going away. So we feel like we have to figure out these things in a certain amount of, a space of time. But when you take away that fear and realize like it takes away the burden and the weight of having to get it right, and then you're able to then be freed of that fear and be able to just be who you are.
Yeah, I think it's learning how to live in the present moment, because if we're in the past and if we're in the future, then time exists. But when we're in the present moment, then we're free from the constraints of time.
And I know that like each day should be devoted to miracles, but even that feels like pressure in a way. Because what if I had a day that I just didn't devote and I just was like trying to do what I could to survive? The more and more I think we apply this information, the more and more it won't feel like the pressure is there.
Yeah, I think that the longer you do this work, the less devotion it takes, just because you've actually changed your behaviors and changed your thought processes. And so naturally, you can live in the present moment, and naturally, you can live in the presence of God.
Miracles are teaching devices for demonstrating it is as blessed to give as to receive. They simultaneously increase the strength of the giver and supply strength to the receiver.
I think that one of the biggest things I've had to learn is just like how to receive. I think a
Mm.
lot of people have had to learn how to receive, and so when you can be in this relationship, like this loving relationship between giving and receiving, that is when you're in your full abundance.
Yeah, like there's some days where I may be having just a day that I'm like blah, and then I show up to a session for a client and I see how their life and how they're getting these answers. And my heart is so like just grateful I showed up, and I just pushed through that, like, oh, you should just stay in bed, right? Like you'd feel a lot better if you just stayed in bed, my mind's telling me. And it's like, no, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna show up. And then I see the gift and I'm like, I'm beaming the rest of the day because I showed up, and somebody else, just the love that they received was wonderful. And that always is a reminder to me of this. Like, you know, it was nothing about anything that I needed from that moment. But I was given the blessings in bountiful ways by just showing up and seeing the love that they experienced.
So do you think that's the devotion that, like, we have to be devoted just to get out of the bed get out of
Maybe
bed during the
sometimes.
day?
Yeah, maybe sometimes like you have to be devoted. You have to reaffirm to yourself. And maybe that's the like, doing things out of like having order to your life and having discipline to your life is because we can give way to the mind and what the mind's trying to tell us and what the hurdles of the mind are putting ahead of us, right? Like and that inner dialogue that may be there, and the devotion may be the discipline of pushing through that.
Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, so discipline to get past the analytical mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're getting there. Um, Miracles transcend the body. They are sudden shifts into invisibility, away from the bodily level. That is why they heal. So it's just from what I understand on the etheric level. It's on this unseen that we can't see of the ripple effect that they create. A miracle is a service. It is the maximal service you can render to another. It is a way of loving your neighbor as yourself. You recognize your own and your neighbor's worth simultaneously.
Yeah,
I go
this is something that I have been practicing a lot. Just one of the so I've been doing a lot of Joe Dispenza since the beginning of my spiritual awakening, and he really goes into like changing the beliefs that are no longer serving you. And the way that I was so conditioned, and I think we've all been conditioned this way, is just that the judgment of others. So, like, I would get on the subway and I would just start judging people for, like, the things that they were wearing, and I would start changing those beliefs to, instead of like, "Ew, those shoes," like, "Oh, I love that they're wearing those shoes. I love that they're expressing themselves." And so I feel like I have been able to like turn this sense of judgment that I used to have into a really positive thinking. However, sometimes it still creeps up back on me. And so I've had to do like a lot of work again with it lately, where if I start to feel like I'm being judgmental towards somebody, just seeing them as myself, seeing the divinity in them instead of seeing them as like, even if you see people walking down the street that you're like, oh, they're attractive. Like I've been trying to be like, oh, I see the divinity in them, and making that mindset shift.
Yeah, as you've been doing that, have you felt different about yourself when you look in the mirror?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the more love I can find in other people, the more love I can find within myself.
Yeah. Um, to be honest, when I didn't like mirrors for the longest time. I and of course, like my house now, the whole bathroom is completely like mirrors. It's ridiculous. Like if you want to talk about being put into something that makes you very, very uncomfortable, that is it for me. And the more and more now when I'm walking by those mirrors and stuff, like I can see the love within myself, but I also know that I'm seeing it more within other people, and that judgment part. And when I do that judgment, I know exactly where it came from. I can tell you those moments that if I look back and I can recall that imprinting moment when I was growing up of the way my mother judged others, and she would say things because she didn't have a very good self-worth of the reflection in the mirror and all of these different things. And like I don't look at her the anger. I look at her and I'm like, I just wish she would have loved who she was in the mirror. And I wish, and then so I don't know, it just changes my whole outward perspective towards appreciating people and loving people. And because these are just really skin suits. And as I get older, the skin wrinkles more, it does these things. It's literally just a suit. And that can't be the definer of who you are. That can't, these outer things don't define who your soul is. And I think that's the one thing you do learn with aging is that I either surrender to the outside thoughts that these are negative things happening, or I let my soul shine even brighter where those things of time don't
Yeah,
matter.
I was with my family on vacation the last couple weeks, and I became really aware of the way that people judge themselves. Like even just the way our self-talk when we do things. Like I had a family member that just spilt water off of the coffee table and was like, I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid. And I was like, don't talk to yourself that way. It's like, no, it's okay that you did that. And so I think really stepping back and looking at our self-talk too, and just realizing that like we were never taught how to talk to ourselves in a loving way. I think that was really eye-opening for me because I had multiple family members. Like, I don't know if that was something that was being shown to me, but it happened multiple times where I just saw that the self-talk of some of my family members was not very loving. And I was like, would you talk to your child that way? Or there's an inner child within you where she just wants to be hugged and be told that that was okay. And so to see those things, I think it's also a miracle when we are able to redirect our self-talk and talk to ourselves in a loving way.
Yeah, it's about being present versus being on autopilot, because those subconscious things are the autopilot if we just let them drive. But when we're present and taking responsibility and being having that dedication to being here, then you're able until in those moments just see, I spilt water because I accidentally hit something, and it's fine, and water evaporates, and it's going to be great, and just I think it's just the presence versus the autopilot that we have to be very, very aware of in anything that we do. And maybe that's devotion, the devotion to the awareness and presence.
Yeah, so do you want to go to lesson 1 in the workbook? We'll start with lesson 1.
Okay, so these are the fun lessons at the back, and we haven't been integrating this, and we're like, you know what? We need to bring these in because it's really wonderful. So I'm going to read them, and this is the homework for everyone until the next video that we do. But lesson 1, nothing I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place means anything. Okay, so 1, now look slowly around you and practice applying this idea very specifically to whatever you see. This table does not mean anything. This chair does not mean anything. This hand does not mean anything. This foot does not mean anything, and this pin does not mean anything. Then look further away from your immediate area and apply the idea to a wider range. That door does not mean anything. That body does not mean anything. That lamp does not mean anything. That sign does not mean anything. And that shadow does not mean anything. Notice that these statements are not arranged in any order and make no allowance for differences in kinds of things to which they are applied. That is the purpose of the exercise. The statement should merely be applied to anything you see. As you practice the idea for the day, use it totally indiscriminately. Do not attempt to apply it to everything you see, for these exercises should not become ritualistic. Only be sure that nothing you see is specifically excluded. One thing is like another as far as the application of the idea is concerned. Each of the first 3 lessons should not be done more than twice a day, preferably morning and evening, nor should they be attempted for more than a minute or so, unless that entails a sense of hurry. A comfortable sense of leisure is essential. So, with doing this, I think it's trying to reset the way we've triaged and assessed every situation to apply in the mind, that because a past outcome has happened, that the future outcome is based on that past outcome happening. And so this is a way for us to kind of just look at things and go, no, that past doesn't apply to this. It just doesn't mean a thing. What do you feel?
Yeah, I think it's to definitely just wipe the slate clean. And I think what was most interesting to me when I was doing this is like seeing how I do attach myself to things, and then also seeing the meaning that I give just material items. And I think that we all give material items meaning because that's how we've been taught and raised, especially when it comes to past experiences. And so when I was doing this, like, I would be like, my laptop doesn't mean anything. And then in the back of my mind, I'd be like, but wait, I need it for work, for all these things that I do. And then I would be like, the TV doesn't mean anything. And I'd be like, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Like, so it's interesting to see like the things that I've attached to, the things that I've made up in my mind to say that like, oh, that's okay or that's not okay. Um, And then I even did where I said my body does not mean anything. And that one I think was very triggering for me because I have worked so hard on building a relationship with my body, especially with my addictions and everything. And so it's also showing you like where your triggers are and your attachments.
Yeah. And I mean, truly, right? If we were living in a free flowing world, that laptop, if it were to go down and you weren't able to access anyone on the internet, the faith of that you were doing your divine work, the people would show up at your doorstep.
Yeah.
And that's what the triggering thing is, like realizing that truly, if we are in flow and we believe we are abundant, and we believe that there's this unconditional, like we're not separate from that unconditional love of kingdom of heaven. So without being separate from that, then that kingdom of heaven is going to show up at your doorstep. So, it's just helping us realize all these things are great tools if it's in what the trajectory we want to go, but the kingdom's there for us. And so we need to stop seeing the hurdles and stop applying these values. Um, and then we'll later learn the values good and bad too, which is a harder lesson for me because I like to add good to things. And sometimes it just is. Fun one to work on. To start looking at things. Don't over hyperfixate because you may throw your brain into a tailspin.
Yes. So if you're doing this lesson with us, let us know in the comments like how it made you feel when you were doing it. Also, you can check me and Carrie out on Patreon at Quantum Awakening Portal, where we have BQH channelings, we do live group hypnosis, live channelings, and we have a beautiful community.
Yes. And if you want to do a BQH session for yourself, you want to look at what's going on in your current life, if you want to look at things that may have attached from past lives or anything like that, just, hey, we're here and we'd love to help you out.
Yeah, some of the best sessions that we've had have been our surrogate sessions where Carrie or I channel for you if you don't feel like you're ready to be under hypnosis. And then we also do tandem sessions where me and Carrie are both there to support you to make sure that you leave the session getting all the information that you needed. And those have been truly transformative for some of our clients.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Have a great week. We love you.
Have a great day.